All right, our next guest was a Green Beret, elite special forces who lost his leg in battle, got a prosthetic leg, and re-qualified for special forces and served 5 more years. He's the co-chair of Florida Maha and now the new lieutenant governor of the great state of Florida. Happy to have Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins with us. If I didn't mention this before, sir, I should also add that you've earned the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart. You've performed surgery on your triage on your own arm to save it, and then later lost your leg and re-upped with the became a Special Forces 2.0. Thank you for our freedom. You exemplify everything that we should be thankful for and the people who serve. Thank you, sir. Tell us about Lieutenant Governor. What's the plan?
Well, Eric, first off, I think we're coming up on 3 weeks and change right now. It's an amazing honor. It really is. To get to serve our people in this regard and just go out there and see people for who they are, how they are, where they are, it means everything. You know, I'm blessed to be Lieutenant Governor. I was blessed to be a Green Beret, but man, I'm a dad and a husband first and foremost. And to be able to really make a difference in the lives of the community means I'm making a difference in the lives of my children, which means I'm living up to the thing that's most important to me, which is being a good dad and a good husband, and ultimately leaving it better than we got it.
Yeah, and you make the state great. I've moved down here 4 years ago, went to college at Rollins in Central Florida, came down here 4 years ago from 30 years in New York, and what a difference it is. I'm never, ever leaving. DeSantis has just done an amazing job. A lot of it has to do with his relationship, and I assume yours, with the sheriff's offices around the state. I assume that'll continue. Sir, immigration, and I want to hit on Alligator, Alcatraz. Where do they stand? Where do they stand with Deportation Depot? These are two things that are cutting edge. I was at Alligator, Alcatraz when it opened, opening day. Fantastic. Judges are playing games with you. Where do these things stand? How do you reopen them?
Well, Eric, the American people have been very clear. They have a clear expectation that illegal immigration will be taken care of. President Trump is leading on that across the country, and no one has done more for the president's agenda on illegal immigration than the great state of Florida. So we are leading the way in 287G agreements. And as is often the case, we know that liberal activists, in this case a judge, wants to get in the mix. They tried to use an EPA study, an assessment, to derail this. We knew that liberal court was going to go ahead and play their games, but we knew that in the appeal we would win, and there was a complete stay in this case. So Alligator Alcatraz is open for business. We are actively working through that. We have Deportation Depot, which is also open for business. And now I hear there's a good conversation on the Panhandle Pokey, which will just triple down on taking care of business, following the will of the American people, and taking this illegal immigration problem seriously.
That's great. That's great. So the good news is you can work on subverting these activist judges in their attempt to shut down things that Americans voted for. Let's face it, they voted for exactly what Trump is doing and what Governor DeSantis and you are doing. Again, this is Jay Collins, Lieutenant Governor of Florida. Glad you're working together with the greatest governor in America, in the States right now. Let's flip a little bit to Maha, Florida. And the reason why this is very important to a lot of us, we are just very, very interested in what's going on with the state of healthcare in Florida. Let's take a listen to Ron DeSantis, if you don't mind.
You had teacher unions fighting this in Chicago, Los Angeles. You know, they would say, oh, it's too dangerous to go to school. And then you'd find one of these union people in the Bahamas putting pictures on Instagram. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Had we listened to Fauci and these people, it would have been devastating for these kids. There's just no question about it. California, Illinois, these states did tremendous harm to these vulnerable kids. And you know what? What they would do is you would have people issuing edicts, and yet these elites, their kids were still going to private school in person, but they were shutting the public where they had the lower income and the working class kids that didn't have access to all these things. And so that was public health pushing an agenda. And it was one of the most harmful agendas to our kids that has ever been pushed in the modern history of our country. We were right in Florida, and they were wrong about what they were trying to do.
So, Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, tell us about the plan going forward for the Maha movement in Florida.
Well, you know, Eric, I think one thing we have to talk about here is he is the greatest governor in our state's history, and there's a reason we call him America's governor. He is absolutely amazing. You see the courage and conviction to step up and stand alone when necessary. That kind of leadership matters. Imagine where our nation would be if Florida hadn't stood. because Governor Ron DeSantis stood. Ultimately, what are we doing with Maha? Ultimately, I think it comes down to parental rights and understanding what goes in your body. This is a big discussion. Immunizations are one part of that. So, if you want to get an immunization, I think you can probably have your immunization, but I think this comes down to mandates, and that is the overriding discussion. But, as a dad, as someone who has
so if I may, sir,
if I may,
it does come down to mandates and no more mandates.
Well, Eric, I think that is exactly what the discussion is. Obviously, it'll be a long legislative process. This will be discussed in depth and breadth. But you know what? I dream of kids not being turned away from their pediatrician. One of my boys had some health issues, and he struggled with a typical immunization schedule. We didn't do the jab because, frankly, we didn't think it was necessary at his age bracket, and the secondary consequences weren't there. And we got turned away from pediatricians simply because of that. That type of action is unacceptable, and I don't want to see any more of that. If you want to get an immunization, you can have your immunization, and I think that's what this discussion is all about. Where are we going to stand as a state? I think you heard the governor, you've heard me, you've heard Dr. Latipo on this, and Florida's going to stand strong. We're going to lead from the front on this, and we'll see how the legislative process works out. But there's a lot of work to do on it.
Well, I would tell you, Florida was cutting edge during COVID. You came out the best you could, came out early, pushed aside some of the federal mandates that they're forcing on us. I know because I had to fly to New York, and at one point I had to get one of the shots. I only had one, but I forced myself. I had to do it because I couldn't get into a New York airport without showing a card saying I was. It was insane. I just don't ever want to have to do that again. It's good to hear you say what you said right there. We only have about a minute or so. One of the things with Florida, greatest state in the world to live, it's just amazing. You're running a budget surplus. There's been talk about eliminating property taxes. A lot of Floridians would love to hear if that is possible going forward.
Yeah, Eric, great question. I do think it's possible. Let's talk about those homestead properties. The American dream is to own your home. Can you ever really own it if you owe money to the government, or they can take it away from you just because something goes wrong? The answer is no. You really don't truly own your home if the government can take it from you. So that's the dream. We're going to work on it. Obviously, we're doing our FAFO, or the work to make sure we find excess government waste. And I do think this is very possible, but it can't be done legislatively. It's going to have to go on the ballot. The people are going to have to vote. And I would encourage people to go out there and make sure they are well read on this. They understand, and then vote. If you think property tax is something we should work through, because I sure as heck would like to not have property tax on my homestead at home, as what I had many of my neighbors.
That's the whole point of homestead. That is the whole point of homestead, Lieutenant Governor. It is music to my ears to hear you say that. When you homestead, you declare this is your dwelling, that you own this dwelling, and the government continuing to tax it just says they own it, you're only renting it from them. It's just so infuriating. I hope you get that as one of the top priorities going forward. I mean, you want to talk about migration to the state of Florida, which you've had wonderful success from California, New York, and some of the other liberal places. I don't like seeing them on the streets. I hate seeing a New Jersey or California license plate on the street, just whatever. But you want the migration. You want the state to be strong. You want that budget surplus to happen. Great across the board, Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins. Go get him, sir. Again, thank you for the sacrifices you made for this country. We appreciate it.
I would do it again in a heartbeat, and twice on Sunday, my friend. Eric, thank you for your time today.
Yes, sir. I'm going to meet you at a Buc-ee's one of these days. We'll get DeSantis out there. The three of us will get a sandwich at Buc-ee's. Mark my words. We're going to do that. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your time.
All right, have a good one, Eric.
You too. All right, folks. 2.5 minutes. We'll be back.